Now we're going to permanently install those carriers. So what I want to do is mark off my run, my length of my panels, and divide it into even spaces. Now I've measured this distance. So from the inside of my G channel to the back of my gutter, I have 113 inches. So I'm going to take 113 inches, and I know, I want my carriers to be about 3 to 3.5 feet apart. So I'm just going to divide 113 by 3, and I happen to end up with 38 and 3/10 inches. So to make it simple, what I'm going to do is simply mark my joists. I'm going to mark it right here at 38 inches, and I'm going to mark it over here at 76 inches. And that's where my two carriers are going to go. So before I go ahead and put my first carrier up, I want to show you how the carrier and the side cap come together. Here's my little shortcut piece of side cap. This is my end of my carrier, and there's a lip on my side cap right there. That's got to fit right in between those teeth, and the side cap's going to rest right on that, and the carrier is going to rest right on that lip. So all the way in the teeth, carrier resting on the lip of the side cap. Now that's important for two reasons. Number one, it's important because it sets the elevation of my carrier. So if my carrier is running straight from one side cap to the other side cap, I end up with a nice flat ceiling. Take the wave out of your carrier as you're installing your panels. Okay? But the other reason is because by starting my carrier in my side cap all the way pushed in like that, my teeth will line up in this direction. Because if my teeth between my carriers aren't lined up the way the panel snaps in, the panel's not going to fit in there. Or it will fit in there and telegraph oil can through the paneling. So by nesting it into the side cap, the same elevation, the same distance, I'm going to get nice straight rows between my carrier teeth. Okay, now I'm going to go ahead and permanently install my carrier. I'm going to rest it on the lip of the side cap, put it on my mark. Come over here with my 1/4 inch zip screw, screw it into the joist. Now I go back down the line and I attach it to each joist. Okay, now that we have one carrier up, what I'm going to show you is how to connect carriers. And when you connect carriers, what you have to do is use a splice. So when I cut my splice out, I'm going to find that little slot in the edge of the carrier. I'm going to cut to that slot on both sides. And then I just lift it and crack it out. I put that in my hand seamer, and I'm going to score it with my utility knife. Score it a couple times, then I'm going to crack those teeth right off. I'm going to do the same thing on the other side. Score it twice. And crack it away. And what I do is I take that and I compress it like this so that it will fit up inside the carrier itself. Once I've got that inside the end of my carrier, I'm going to slide it back and forth until these holes on the side line up. When I get those holes to line up, I go ahead and run a screw through both of them on both sides of the splice. That's what maintains the proper spacing between the teeth from one carrier to the next. Now I'm going to go ahead and slip this splice up inside the other carrier. I can look at the side and see when my holes are lined up, and I can go ahead and put my screw in. Now when I bring my other carrier up, it's going to go right over the splice on the other side, line my holes up, and run another screw in. So now I'm going to finish off this row of carriers, and I'm going to have to cut a piece to size here. So I'm going to go ahead and set this on my splice that we just installed. I'm going to get it up here in line and slide it so that it butts to the other one, which will be adjusted later, but I'm doing that just to get my correct length for where I cut this one. So I get a mark, and then I'll bring it down and cut it all the way through. Now if you remember on the other side, what I did was I notched the side cap tooth into that little opening between the bottom of the tooth and the rail. But because we don't know quite where the side cap's going to hit on this side, I'm going to bend these teeth 90 degrees like this. And what that will do is it'll allow this to slide on my side cap, just like that, so that I can adjust it to length over at my splice. So what I can do now is I can go ahead and I can rest this on my splice here, and I can rest it on the side cap here. And when I have it in place, I can let go of it because it's being supported, and I can go down here and I can finish screwing my splice together to keep my alignment right. So now I've got my last piece of carrier, section of carrier in place, line the holes of my splice up with my carrier itself, screw that together, and now again, the spacing between these teeth, between the two carriers, is the same as all the rest of the teeth, and I can go ahead and attach it to my joist. So now that we've got our first row of carriers in, we're ready to run our second and third rows of carriers. We're going to do that by, again, hanging them from screws, but as you'll notice, I haven't drawn this screw all the way up tight to the joist. The reason I did that is because this second carrier has to be lower, because that's how I slope down to my gutter. So my second, third, and fourth rows of carriers are all going to be lower from the joists as you go down towards the gutter. So I'm just going to put each second and third row of carriers up with 1 or 2 screws just to get them in place, and then I don't set the final elevation until I put my paneling in. Now as you can see, I've got my second row of carriers up, and as I said earlier, I did not draw the screws all the way tight to the bottom of the joist because that's how I put my fall in my system. As I get closer to the gutter, those carriers are going to be lower and lower off the joists. So now I just kind of put it up there with a couple screws. I turn and I eyeball it, look down it, try to get it semi-straight, because I'm not going to do my final adjustments until I'm actually putting in my panels, and that's when I'll put my set screws in. All right, now we're going to talk about cantilevers. This section of the deck right here is what we call a cantilever. As you can see, it's hanging over this beam. If you remember previously, we talked about attaching the gutter on the inside of this beam. The panels coming off the house drain into that same gutter. Now what we're going to do is divert the water from this side of the beam over the top of it and into that same gutter by using this. We call this a pan flashing. And I made this out of trim coil on the brake. It's simply a V bent piece of metal with 2 sides bent down. You want to be sure to install the cantilever flashing before you start running any of your panels. Once your panels are installed, you won't be able to get up and access the flashing in order to caulk it and seal it to the wood. And what we do with this is we take it, and it's bent to size. I put it up in between my joists. I go over the top of my beam with it. I push it all the way to the bottom side of the deck boards on the outside, and then I'm going to put caulking and screw it to the inside of the beams. So the purpose here is for the water to fall through the deck boards here, lands in this pan, drains over the top of my beam, and lands in the same gutter on the inside. To attach the flashing, I'm going to grab this lip that I bent on the edge of it here with the pliers and pull it away from the side of the joist, get up in there with my caulk gun, fill that with caulk, then I'm going to let go of it and just let it squeeze out right onto the side, and then I'll go ahead and put a zip screw in there to hold it in place. Okay, now we're ready to install our first panel. And what I've done is I've taken my little splice of side cap again so I can show you how the panel and the side cap fit together. First panel is going to nest right into the side cap, just like that. Now in order to do that, if you take a look up here, you can see that the teeth of my carrier are in the way. So what I have to do is I have to bend those teeth sideways, just like I did on the other end. Bend them sideways at a 90-degree angle to get them out of the way. Now I can take my panel, I go up over the gutter, up into the G channel, and then I slide it back. Now I can push it over into the side cap. So now I reach up in there to make sure I'm fitted into my side cap, and then I roll the outer lip in. And I do that by pushing up with my thumbs, pull it back, and snap it. And as I said earlier, I go up over the gutter, up into the G channel, and then I slide it back. Now I take my two thumbs, I put them here on this lip, and I roll it up, pull it back to me, and then reach back and lock the backside. So as I'm installing my panels here, I come across the joist. Every time I'm going to cover a joist, I'm going to check my panel to see if there's a belly in it, you know, where it sags in the middle, or if there's a crown in it, or if possibly it's not resting on the gutter right here. Now the way I can adjust that is by raising and lowering my carriers. So in this case, I got just a little bit of a belly in the bottom of my pan, so I'm going to raise this carrier up right here till I get that belly out of there, and make sure that I'm still resting on the pan over here, on the gutter over here. Now once I get that nice and straight and I'm resting on the gutter, I want this carrier to stay right here, so I'm going to go over here with another screw out of this next hole, and I'm going to put a screw up into that same joist on an angle. Now the combination of the screw straight up and the screw at an angle keeps that carrier from bouncing up and down on the screw, and it locks it at that elevation.